All right, so we just watched Orson Welles' film interpretation of Franz Kafka's The Trial. It's been a while since I've seen the movie. It's been even longer since I've read the book. Uh, One thing I will say about the movie is that it does end differently. There are many differences, of course, but in the novel, he is stabbed in the heart at the end, and here he is blown up by dynamite. um, which is it's a movie ending. It's a big Hollywood movie ending in a way, and with an explosion. Um, but yeah, I enjoyed seeing it again. Um, Lots of things. I was struck by lots of things, but I'm interested to hear what people thought of it, and maybe someone who hadn't seen it before or hasn't read the trial. If Dave, like you haven't read the trial, I don't think, and you haven't seen the movie before or any Orson Welles film. But Hermala, go ahead.
Yeah, I came in a little bit late, but yeah, I've read I think his Franz Kafka's book Metamorphosis. I have never heard of this book, heard of this movie until I just coming here now,
Mhm.
and I definitely felt like a sense of claustrophobia throughout the film. Just
Hmm.
a sense of like, oh my gosh, this guy is going through all the options and there's just no way out. And it's like no matter where he runs, the system is just there and it's going to catch him. And I don't know, I just kept thinking about like the DEI trials that have gone on recently
Hmm.
in like college universities or just people just getting accused and then just not even knowing who the accusation or what the accusation. You're just like left being like, what did I do? What am I doing? What is going on?
Hmm.
Where am I? Um, And just that sense of like I don't want to overuse the term, just feeling like you're just gaslighted, you're questioning your own sanity. You're just
Hmm.
you feel like physically sick due to the emotional turmoil you're going through. And just like those scenes where the main actor is just like he's just sweating and he just has to take off his clothes because he's just like he just feels trapped. I thought it was the way Orson Welles like captured that I think was great. Like I have no idea how to talk about camera stuff, but just how he like the scenes where he's running away from the children, the scenes where he's with the advocate and just the other guy just comes in and is just kneeling and kissing him and then Bruce Willis just rubbing his chest. That was just that was just chef's kiss. Um but this is if someone wants to know what the deep state is, this is the deep state.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. I'm sure I'm not using the terminology correctly, but that's what
Hmm.
I felt like when I was watching this. It felt like the
Hmm.
deep state.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I Right before I started the screening on Zoom here, I just had recorded a conversation with Catron, which will be coming out on Friday, and I was railing about how uh, the Associated Press was it seemingly intentionally misrepresenting Tulsi Gabbard's revelations. Um, and if you that you had to read the reporting very critically in order to get to the truth. And I was trying to describe why this particular uh, scandal was of significance, and Catrone, as always, playing the devil's advocate, is pushing back on me, saying, "Well, this is the state is the mob. The state is corrupt. This is how it's been forever. This is how it's been with Trump for the last 10 years." Um, and uh, but At the end of that conversation, I concluded that it 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 struck me that for me to expect that the major media, and now I think even left media or alternative media online, could easily just cut through the spectacle or the propaganda or the state sanctioned, deep state controlled uh, understanding of our situation was incredibly naive. Like it was I think Susanna Kleeman called me recently charmingly American, or something like that. And that is, uh, so that's how I feel about watching this. Is like I'm reminded, oh yes, I've known this since I was in my 20s about the world, and yet somehow I forget it. But Xavier, go ahead.
Yeah, so under normal circumstances, this movie would not be my aesthetic. But so I appreciate watching it through the context of sublation, I guess, right? Um, because, the whole thing is like a fever dream, right? Um, and it's just like one non sequitur after another. But I think what struck me as interesting was that sometimes he's thrown off by the non sequitur, and then sometimes he's just like yes and to the non sequitur, right? And he himself is like following along with the prompts of the thing, these absurdities, like where he's talking about something, they'll just completely like repivot the conversation, and then he'll just like run with it as well. And so it does seem like sometimes he's like, wait, why are you changing the subject? Other times he's like, oh yeah, we were for I have totally forgotten the context that came before, right? And so obviously that's like on purpose, right?
Hmm.
That it's easy for you to forget, right? Or one to forget in this society of like sort of post-truth or whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
And obscurity. Sometimes even if you are a critical observer of such a system, right? I guess the example you gave about yourself is the perfect example of this, right? It's like you're a critical observer and you know about the post-truth, and yet you, for a moment, forget that, of course, that's what's going to happen, right?
Right.
Um, and so I just thought that was interesting. So I did enjoy it, but it was there's a part of me that was like offended by the sensibility of the film, right? But it was interesting.
Well, I want to ask you something as a follow-up to Xavier before I go to, I think it's Hermal and Rudy, but when you say non sequitur, what do you what precisely do you mean? And I have my own theory about what you mean, but I want to hear your answer. Do you feel like you felt like this was disjointed, that one scene didn't really connect to the next, or?
It's even within a scene, like within turns of dialogue, right? It's like the way the conversation would flow would have a direction to it, and then they would sort of use like the double meaning of a sentence to completely like kaleidoscope flip what the conversation was about into it being about something else entirely. And sometimes he was like, "Wait, what are you talking about? Of course, there's a oval on the thing. There's this dentist or whatever,
Oh,
right?"
right,
And
right, yeah.
sometimes, right? And sometimes he'd be like confused and put off by that. And then other times when somebody would just completely change the subject based on like some turn of phrase, he would just be like, "Oh yeah, of course, that's what we're doing right now. You know, we're like flirting at the advocate's office or whatever, right? Like I would, if I watched, I could take notes and find like more explicit examples, but it was like peppered with these things like the entire film where the conversation just didn't follow. And that's what I meant by said it feels like it offended my sensibilities, is because it feels like it's like an assault on reason and coherence,
Hmm.
right? Is exactly the point. I know, yes, it's not lost on me, but it's still just like at the level of aesthetic, it's like almost painful, physically painful for me to watch a film like this, you know?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm going to be bragging or confessing, but I didn't find the film difficult to follow on that level, or to follow the reason and it's working itself out. The one thing I'll say, like at the beginning during the interrogation or the quasi interrogation, it's sort of set up that there's never a moment where you're told that what is happening is actually the official proceeding. Everything is happening before the official proceeding, and then after a certain point in the film, it's after. There's never, so everything is about like in this liminal space. The and in the at the beginning, the fact that it's unofficial is quite clearly a tool they're using against him, because they make it seem as though he's waiting for some sort of formal procedure, and then it turns out that the guy he was talking to at the beginning was the the head officer, the one who really will decide his case at that stage. And but then he'll say things like, "Well, it's not to me to speak to this." So there's always a deferral of authority, a deferral of reason for everything that is never quite official. But the everything that seems to be liminal and unofficial is actually the way the system is processing his case. And it builds. First, he'll encounter women who are apparently in a servile role, and they will appeal to him and are attracted to him as sort of in some sort of solidarity of the oppressed, it almost seems like. And then it turns out they're always actually a part of the mechanism. And it goes all the way to the end, where it's just a huge crowd of little girls who are clearly from the start of that scene attached to the court and representatives of the oppressive side of society. And so yeah, there's a and all of that made sense to me. And I'll just confess that that's now definitely become a confession. But yeah, no, I do understand what you mean. It's an assault on reason, but it's like the reason of unreason, because it does track. I mean, it does progress. And obviously he's punished for abandoning his advocate. I mean, the things are sped up at the end when he dismiss. I think in the film, I don't know if it's in the novel, but in the film, it seems pretty clear that once he dismisses his advocate, he's given one last opportunity to kind of remain in the system and therefore survive rather than live. And he rejects that, and then he gets to be destroyed. So I think it was Hermala, and then Rudy. No, and then I don't know.
I think
Come on.
Rudy was first.
Okay, go ahead, Rudy.
But Dave can go first too because he didn't see it, and I know the story already.
Okay.
And he has I'm interested in.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I don't have much to say. I've never watched a film quite like that before. But I must say I enjoyed it more than No Exit, although I did enjoy No Exit quite a lot. No Exit had a very profound effect on me, I think, which was interesting because um, this film was kind of hard to follow, precisely because it kind of screams at you that there's a deeper meaning to every moment of it. There's really no way away from that because it just doesn't make any sense. I guess the only thought that I really had that was kind of, I don't know, grounding in a way or kind of gets at the meaning was maybe just, I don't know if you'd call it a double entendre of the word trial. But it's almost like he's putting himself through a trial. He's not, like he's sort of, he keeps going behind the curtain a little bit, but it's almost like every time he gets there, he knows, it's almost like he's been there before. He'll go to, he's with the inspectors and he seems to know how to talk to them. He's not afraid of them. He's kind of like, yeah, I know how this is going to go. And then he goes to the advocate and yeah, I know how this is going to go. And just kind of on and on like that. Like his personality is just strange. There's no fear in him, which was weird. He's just kind of, I wouldn't know how to describe it. It's just odd. I mean, of course, I think some of this is coming out because I've already read the Adorno essay, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I do want to point out that if you read the novel, while Joseph K. isn't like uh, doesn't write about his fear directly, not that I recall, it is clear that it's a lot often told. The story is told through an interior monologue and self-reflection. And this movie couldn't do that. I mean, it would have just been all narration if it had tried to do that. Um, and you do get a sense that Kay is overwhelmed and feels guilty, um, much more than you do in when you watch the film. It's mentioned. He actually says it a few times that condemned feel guilty because after all, isn't guilty, at least in their thought, and he describes that early on in the picture. But yeah, I think some critics at the time, I actually, before we started the screening, I asked ChatGPT, what did critics at the time say? So if ChatGPT isn't, if the AI isn't just making shit up, which it sometimes does, um, some critics at the time were disappointed in a tonal shift, particularly in the way that Anthony Perkins chose to depict the role. He has a very distinct style as an actor, and I think he's got a lot of neurotic energy,
Yeah.
um, and he's very physical, and that might be. I mean, I think it's a good choice for the film, but it doesn't quite work with the way if you just read the novel that you might imagine Kay would be. And he has a he wasn't exactly a huge leading man. His other big role was in Psycho, but he's an actor. He's charismatic. He's a film star. So there's a quality to him in this that is quite different than the way I would have imagined, or the way I did imagine Kay when I read um, the novel. And when I read the novel, I just identified it was just me. However I conceived of myself is how I perceived Kay. Um, but yeah, uh, it is a different kind of film than most Hollywood movies. Orson Welles' most successful film actually wasn't a success, but his most famous film and critically acclaimed film is Citizen Kane. It was about William Randolph Hearst. It was a criticism of the monopoly capitalists and the robber baron type, Rockefeller type, but specifically William Randolph Hearst uh, type of personality, and that film faced suppression from William Randolph Hearst, and it did wreck his career. He was a 25-year-old director and actor. He was very charismatic and handsome at the time when he made that film, and he was not able to really pursue his film career on the level that he might have if he hadn't angered the gods. So that might be one of the reasons why Orson Welles was particularly attracted to the trial, I think. Um, but yeah, if you haven't seen Citizen Kane, it's worth watching. He was an independent filmmaker in a Hollywood system. He was an innovator of the form. Citizen Kane does things that, at least I've been told by those who really know, that are, break the mold. He created new techniques for cinema with that film, and I think he's on a lower budget and in a more marginal time of his life in '62. He's still trying to push the boundaries of filmmaking with this. Rudy, go ahead.
Yeah, I found it really really great when we began watching. I was like, oh shit, is this gonna be the American beautified version of the trial? And then, but I really liked what he did with it because um he kinda like he puts you on a wrong track at first, like on a false track. It could still go into this direction of like it's actually a thriller, and then continuously he built these images. They get more abstract, right? You go with the first apartments; they are very realistic, and the stage setting gets weirder and weirder the longer the movie goes. And I agree with on that level with Xavier that it's like very um, in a sense like confusing for you because at sometimes he will go out of a building and he will suddenly be in a plaza, right, in an open square, and then he can go back into the church, but actually the pastor is speaking to him in front of the church, and then they are immediately inside. And then later, they actually don't really know how they did that. I wondered about that when I saw that church scene, because later he's going out of the real closed church. Um, and it really broke my heart. I mean, that ending is horrible. Like the way, I don't know of you guys, but the way that like if any of you have ever been arrested in your life, but like the way they carry him through these streets and it becomes this nightmare realm, right? Where the streets become longer and longer, and suddenly he's in a little village, rural place, and you don't really know how they got from A to B. I was really like, that's actually what it feels like to be carried off in this way, where you do not know where you end up, and you get thrown into like some police car, and it's like they do not even talk to you really. Um, yeah, that really broke my heart. I'm also wondering about the significance of the bomb that goes off, because maybe like Wells, I'm not so sure about it yet, but maybe Wells is reverting back to like a certain sense of certainty and um pathos that's actually unwarranted for, right? To scream like you have to do it, and then they just bomb you,
Hmm.
um, which makes it more heroic, actually, his end.
Hmm.
And not just what Dan wrote in the chat, like a dog, where they just cut him up and they also strangle him at the same time. It's like a weird kind of overkill, which is really brutal. Um, yeah, I have other things to say, but that's for now. That's it from me.
I didn't like that choice when I saw it either of using dynamite to blow him up instead of kill him. But um, I can think I understand the logic behind it because um, it was kind of maybe ham-fisted a comment on the impersonal nature of violence, in the 20th century after World War II, during the Cold War. So he's saying you have to do it. You have to do it with your hands. You have to kill me, and they didn't have to. They have a device that does it for them. But it does make him more heroic, and overall, he's less passive than Kay was in the novel. Um,
I hope they would shoot him. It would have been less heroic, I think, if they just like um, shot him with bullets. That's what I assumed would actually happen, not this
hmm,
dynamite.
Well, if you'd
yeah,
allow me to interject,
yeah. Go ahead, Eddie.
sorry, I wanted to see him get stabbed. Like Anthony Perkins and Norman Bates. I mean,
Yeah, of course.
but did this predate Psycho? Because he looks young in this one. I don't know.
Yeah, let's see. Psycho came out in the late 60s, I think.
At least, yeah, yeah.
Uh, it No, it came 2 years after Psycho.
Oh, so yeah, you need to get his.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
Sebastian. Yeah,
Right, right.
but sorry.
That's that's fine. So Hermala and then Xavier. Hermala.
I guess my question is, what was Kafka's inspiration for writing the trial?
Ooh, ooh.
Oh wow. Um, I I don't know. He was psychic. Rudy, go ahead. Do you know?
Also, he was a labor advocate and he worked in law firms. He never really said if like what the inspiration was. I think it's not really um, transcribed or like transmitted through history, but he was a labor advocate in Czech. I think it was in Czech where I think he was Czech.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Have you
I
guys
knew
ever
it.
read his diaries before? I had there was like two books. One was a continuation of the next one. I had one of them, and it's very very good. His writing is very good in those diaries, and I don't know. He had a friend named Max Brod, I
Mm-hmm.
believe, who saved his work. I mean, I believe Kafka wanted to destroy all his work, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
and he
You're
made
you're
an ethical decision to keep it, or went against his wishes. I believe. I believe,
mm-hmm. That is correct. Yeah.
but he yeah, it's remarkable that I mean, yeah, I didn't have my hand up. I'm sorry. By the way, how do you fucking
Uh,
put your hand up on this thing?
if you don't know, you don't know. No,
All right,
no.
I don't
There's
know.
a button. There's a button at the bottom that
Fuck.
says react,
I'm on my
and
phone though. Oh, React.
I think
I'm
you
sorry.
press that, and then if you press it's like a little heart, and then
Oh, yeah, I see that. I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah, yeah. My
yeah,
bad.
and then you raise hand. No, it's okay. I have to remind myself because I just give myself permission to talk whenever I want.
Right, right.
Um,
That's right. That's right. I'm raised
but
hand. There it is. I'm so stupid. Sorry.
that's
There you
okay. Okay, so it's Xavier, then Dan, then Rudy, then Eddie. Xavier, go ahead.
Well, just a reminder, His Majesty need not sully his hands with raising. Um,
go.
but unlike the rest of us, like just like the advocate in the kissing the hand.
Right, right.
um, so I guess I want to defend the dynamite. In that I do think it's a modernization that I appreciate, and whether as a film thing you want to criticize it, right? But as a point, I will stand by it, which is that there's something very final and brutal about being able to stab somebody repeatedly in the chest and brutally murder them. And there's something very different about them almost having like the cowardice to not be able to do that, and yet at the same time them being able to just like throw dynamite at him and take this problem away. And I actually do think that's probably more reflective of the sort of system and that we live in, the cruel bureaucracy that we live in, is that people can kind of, in a sense, wash their hands. They don't have to have this direct sort of violence on people, right? It's mediated through this like impersonal mechanism. And so, and yet it's no less brutal, right? So like the irony there of like, that, oh, well, they're passing the knife back. I think that's what they were doing. They're passing the knife back and forth to be like, you do it, you do it. And he's like, oh, you guys are cowards. And then like, as much as he wants to call them cowards and he's correct, they can just like kind of like light a match and then throw the thing down and then it's done anyway, but they don't have to feel like the weight of like stabbing someone in the chest, right? So I think, and again, I do think that's more reflective of society. So I will defend Orson Welles, and I will say it's not. I didn't quite think it was ham-fisted, but I thought it was a different interpretation of like this impersonal brutality.
Right. Okay, so it's Dan. Go ahead.
Thanks. So, okay, I appreciate Xavier's point about the choice to use the dynamite instead, but what I would say, pushing back against that a bit, is that one of the things that's very striking about how the novel ends, with him being stabbed in the heart and strangled, is precisely how, because it's part of this great, incomprehensible, bureaucratic structure, these acts which ordinarily do have this incredibly visceral, hands-on character to them are nevertheless performed in this very impersonal way. I think there is something powerful in that juxtaposed combination of the very brutal and the hands-on with the impersonal way in which it is nevertheless carried out. So that would be my my defense of keeping it the way it was in the novel. This was my first time watching this film and actually watching any adaptation of the trial. I enjoyed it a lot. Certainly, there were a number of changes that I noticed, despite the fact it's been a full decade since I last read the novel. Very much appreciated the cinematographic qualities. As I said earlier, the way it becomes more and more abstract and disjointed as it goes on. Excellent stuff. Kafka's past as a lawyer has already been brought up, and sort of closely related that he worked for an insurance bureau, so very much somebody who sort of understood the workings of an unfeeling, often incomprehensible bureaucracy. So you can see how that probably would have inspired a work like this. The context in which I first read the novel was actually as part of a law and literature class that I took as a law student back then. And one point which was stressed to us, which is in one of the different interpretations that I listed in a message in the chat earlier, what was how you could also take much of this as a commentary on how many of the things that we as lawyers or as prospective lawyers or as people who are in some sense insiders to the legal system, how many of the things that we take for granted and see as sort of commonsensical are incredibly opaque to anybody who doesn't have that doesn't have that insider perspective, doesn't have those insider habituses, etc., that allow one to navigate the labyrinth. Okay. I'll leave it there because it's getting towards 1 a.m. here, and I do have something to wake up for in the morning, so I'll probably quietly leave in a few minutes. But just thought I'd share those thoughts and that aspect of how I first encountered the trial. Thanks.
I want to read just a little bit of the ending of the trial, and I'll abbreviate it a little bit. But he says, the repulsive courtesies began once again. One of them passed the knife over K to the other, and who then passed it back over K to the first. K now knew it would be his duty to take the knife as it passed from hand to hand above him and thrust it into himself. But he did not do it. Instead, he twisted his neck, which was still free, and looked around. And then I'll skip down to the end. Uh, then he says, "Who was that? A friend? A good person? Somebody who was taking part? Somebody who wanted to help? Was he alone? Was it everyone? Would anyone help? Were there objections that had been forgotten? There must have been some. The logic cannot be refuted, but someone who wants to live will not resist it. Where was the judge he'd never seen? Where was the high court he had never reached?" He raised both hands and spread out all his fingers. But the hands of one of the gentlemen were laid on Kate's throat, while the other pushed the knife deep into his heart and twisted it there, twice. As his eyesight failed, Kay saw the two gentlemen cheek by cheek, close in front of his face, watching the result. Like a dog, he said. It was as if the shame of it should outlive him. All right, so Rudy, go ahead.
Yeah, again, that's heartbreaking. And I think, okay, first of all, I think thank you for the correction, Dan, that he worked for an insurance company. And in light of like the genre of expansive realism that we try to develop, I think we could very much see these like what Xavier called non sequiturs, um, being like real life experience but taken out of context, right? Like um, the guy waiting for you all the time and then being like, I tell you a secret, but you have to tell me yours. I could very much see like a guy needing insurance payment to whisper that to someone, but it's always disconnected from its circumstances. And so it attains a different quality because it stands only on itself in a sense. Um, that's something I found really interesting. And I think we could make out multiple instances of these like real life experiences. Um, then I wanted to point out that we never learn in the novel and neither in the film if the cortex is official. That's something that's never really answered. It could very well be the case that this is all illegal. So that's not really the point, but I still think that's an interesting tension that he doesn't make that clear. Because it's even a concern that Kay has at the beginning of the novel and in the beginning of the movie. Because the cops, these guys who come to his house, they never answer if they're actually the cops. Um, and then I wanted to raise it maybe a point higher because in part at the part in the movie, I think it was when he talked about the law the second time in church. I talked about Brecht's poem to posterity, where he says like um, that it's a crime to look at a tree and witness its beauty in the world that we live in. And so I think like on some level we can read it as like the law is also like everything that every notion, every idea of causality and order we have is connected with our guilt. So already by birth, I am guilty because I am not I'm necessarily having to live the lie of the whole world, that this is all that it is. Um, and I think that's also where Benjamin Benjamin says, like Walter Benjamin says, but Kafka is not the mystic. It's not only on a theological level, but it's on a real level. It's on a material level that he works through this. Um, yeah, and maybe the last thing I wanted to say is maybe I wondered if for the time, because I think Wells is really pushing some boundaries on like what is um, considered good taste in movies at the time, right? He has this weird moments where this like sometimes, for example, when the artist is saying to the girls, like, maybe I get my ice pick. You remember my ice pick? You have this weird, I don't know, like this atmosphere of pedophilia for a second enters the room and then it goes away again. Um, but maybe the to direct, like to shoot Anthony Perkins getting killed in that way was maybe too much, even as a career decisions for Anthony Perkins. Because as far as I'm aware, and you brought this up already, Doug, back then they had to more carefully examine how they are depicted, because it could very well be that you wouldn't find work as easily afterwards,
Mhm.
because you didn't yet have these like extreme movies where like art movie and extreme movie blend in, like, for example, French extremism.
Mhm. When I heard the thing about the ice pick, I was very literal minded. I figured, there are all these slats in the wall, and he was taking an ice pick and poking him in the eye with it. But uh, but your interpretation is just as valid, I think. Eddie, go ahead.
Yeah. So first, I'm going to say something really, really weird. I saw similarities between this and the human centipede. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's the sense of doom. And it's also one of those feelings where the viewer knows that there's no escape, the viewer and the reader, I mean, and you're just watching this happen. And there's this, like, again, I'm telling you, like, basically the feeling that I got more than meaning necessarily, but there's this sort of, those moments where he seemed to have the upper hand, and then he was just slammed. You know, it was interesting in that, like, there's that moment in that what in that big room where everybody's where it's a huge crowd and stuff, and he's kind of like this whistleblower, and he's like saying, "Ha, I'm gonna
Yeah.
report you," yeah. And no, it's not happening, and there's it's not all this. Well, somebody mentioned earlier claustrophobia. You got claustrophobia and frustration, and you're thinking that maybe a beautiful woman will sort of like help me with the claustrophobia, at least relieve me. But then he doesn't get that release either, and there's these moments where he's a neurotic, and actually much like Kafka himself, because Kafka had this strange sort of, like, he was both kind of a I don't want to say heartthrob on the one hand. There's moments where, when Anthony Perkins just leans over and kisses that woman,
Mhm.
he just did it like a very, 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 a lot of confidence. And then next, he's back to being neurotic and nervous again.
Mhm.
There's just that it was very frustrating, because at any moment where he felt like he had the upper hand, he gets thrown in his back again. He's back to, and you're just watching his impending doom, and it's getting more. It's about claustrophobic. It was already claustrophobic because you're in a room, and then there's like one or two moments where he's actually outside, but even being outside was very claustrophobic. It's like just
Right.
like and so I liked it. I like the filmmaking. I have to say, it's very. I mean, it's Orson Welles. He
Mhm.
was, well, I don't want to say ahead of his time. It's stupid, but he knew how to evoke certain things. He was very, very good at that. So yeah, I just got this sense of constant frustration, and um, yeah, and then it ends, of course, with him. And by the way, I mean, do you think maybe that the bomb was just sort of like, I don't know, for the censors, maybe, because, like, because even if you stab somebody, I mean, even if it's off camera, it's a little bit disturbing. He's like, you know what, I'm Orson Welles, I'm dealing with all this shit. Might as well just sort of, you know what, let's do it that way. Let's just not go there. I'm sure I mean, after Citizen Kane and other things, he's pretty much frustrated with the studios and whatnot. So,
Yeah.
anyways, yeah,
One thing
yeah.
I'll say is that after reading the ending aloud, I
Mhm.
can see why Wells chose to have Anthony Perkins express directly that
Yeah.
they had to do it, right? Because otherwise he might not have trusted the audience to quite register.
Right. It's true.
Or because he had to let the audience in on how Kay was thinking, and the only way to do it on the screen without a voiceover would be to have the
That's
characters.
true. Yeah, because it's not first person here.
Right.
Yeah.
Hermala,
Sorry.
that's okay.
One human centipede.
I've not seen that. Is it worth seeing, or is it? Am I just?
In my defense, I wanted to say it's that feeling of, I mean, the dread that with human centipede, there's no way out. There's no way out.
All right.
There's
Right,
so
right.
you know, it's
Have
like
you seen it, Hermala?
Yeah, I mean, just to make a joke about the end, just to say the main character is definitely stuck between a rock and a hard place at the end.
that's what I mean.
Oh God.
But I mean, I guess so. I was trying to read a little bit of Adorno's commitment essay while you guys were talking, and I was wondering, do you think that the movie at the end offers like a sense of consolation to the main character and the audience, or just the scenes of him with like other people just being like, oh, he's not alone in this. They're all caught in this weird limbo sort of thing. Um, just because I thought like I guess Adorno's point about how like in art there can be a consolation to the suffering we face in capitalism, I thought was very interesting. But I'm still also just trying to grasp that point.
I think that the consolation that Adorno is talking about is the consolation that we are getting, not that Kafka or Kay received in the story, but that we get the consolation of getting to make society and its
I can't hear
corruption.
you.
Oh, can you hear me now? Can anybody hear
I
me?
can
Yes.
find. Yeah, I
Okay.
can hear.
I don't think the consolation, Hermala, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I don't think the consolation is the consolation for the character K. It's the consolation is what the audience or the reader gets from being able to make an object out of their own experience of the world and make it more self-conscious, more transparent, to be able to fully understand and see the totality of the situation through the art. You disagree, Rudy, or no? Hermala can't hear me anymore.
No, I was reacting to the comment of Eddie. I had a
Oh,
visceral
okay.
reaction.
All right. All right. All right.
No. We talk fancy. We are all equals here.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to talk fancy too much, but I was struggling yeah, I guess I was. Anyway, Xavier, go ahead.
Hey man, I'm a Philistine too, Eddie, so don't worry about it. I guess though, I will say, one thing that I have two things. So the first thing is one thing that struck me is how, this story kind of robs us of the idea of a hero and even robs us of the idea of villains, right? And I don't just mean that there is no hero and there are no villains, but quite specifically, like Kay believes himself often in the story to be a hero and is disabused of that notion many times. And I think that goes to like Eddie's point about like sometimes he has this like swagger of like, oh, I'm better than this. I'm gonna beat this. I'm firing my lawyer. I'm giving the speech in the hallway. I'm kissing the girl, blah blah blah. And every single time he has some sort of sense of control, it's torn away from him. And he doesn't have a heroic ending because even though he kind of says like, "Oh, you're gonna have to kill me. I'm not succumbing." There's like I guess a faint heroism in that, except it doesn't matter at all because no one hears him, no one knows about him, right? So there is no, it's nihilistic in that sense, right? That there is no sort of resolution, because not even really the villains win per se, right? Because to them this is nothing, right? This is not some goal that they had. This was just the course of what they're doing, right? It's the same way that, like, the mob boss doesn't really think about like the low level street shakedowns, like it's a non-event for them, right? So it's not even a villain in that sense, where the villain's like getting their goal at the expense of the hero. It's not even that. So I think that was interesting, and it relates to the second point I had, which is like, Doug, I wonder, like, what are we to do with this? Like, what made you want us to watch this and reflect on it as part of this? I know it's expansive real, like, don't cop out and say, oh, expansive realism, right? Like, let's, like, I want to, like, get to, like, specifically, like, what does this present to us as challenges and opportunities, um, besides the fact that, like, oh, it's fictional, but it tells us something more real about life. I get that part, but I want to go deeper than that,
I
right?
want to
And so that's what I'm challenging you with.
okay, I will not cop out by saying it's expensive realism. I will find a different way to cop out. Um, which is to say that the reason I decided to do these screenings is because one of the patrons, and I forget who it was complaining about having to trying to read, not having to read, trying to read Commitment, knowing that there was something good in there. After all, our track coach Chris Catrone recommended it. Not I, it wasn't just coming from me, and finding it very difficult to make heads or tails out of. And I thought, and he said he had not read or seen any of the work that was being discussed in the essay Commitment. And I realized, well, if you don't have at least a kind of basic understanding of these characters as types of Brecht, Sartre, Kafka, and Beckett as taking positions in the literary world, then you will not be able to quite make sense of the essay Commitment. You do have to have at least a rudimentary understanding of their work. And I thought, well, I can do that. Let's just provide everybody who's interested in with a rudimentary understanding. It's not going to be as in depth as Adorno's in the essay, but it will give them it basically, I was going to try to give the patrons the same working understanding of the works that I have. So, and my understanding comes from, I've read Kafka's The Trial and Metamorphosis and Hunger Artist and a number of other works by him. I read The Castle, but just as importantly, more recently, I've seen The Trial, and I own The Trial on VHS tape. And so I thought, oh, well, we can just do these screenings together. So it was in order to give people access to Commitment. And then the question becomes, what does Adorno's essay Commitment give us as people who are trying to communicate about socialism today? And it can't, that's basically it. Is like, I'm building a media project aligned with the Campaign for a Socialist Party, and I'm trying to take up Commitment. I'm trying to be committed to it, right? And as a writer, and I guess as a director now, and as an editor. So that's why. And I want to give Xavier a chance to respond to me, and then I'll go to you, Rudy. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Xavier.
I think that's fair, and I think that's exactly what it raises, is what you said, which is, okay, we want to give that background context so that people can grapple with commitment, right? Okay, right. And then it's like, so then for what purpose? And I think it is good to take stock of the fact that, like, isn't part of Kafka's worldview here is his politics are very individual, like individuals toiling under the force greater than themselves, that they have no power against. And isn't that exactly what we as, like, socialists, um, want to counter, right? Is that these Byzantine structures are actually the products of society, and we can change them, even though they have this sort of objective, alienated power over us, and that's very real. So the rational kernel of Kafka is that these bureaucratic Byzantine oppressive things are real, and they do show themselves up in real ways. Like, I was thinking Rudy gave the example of like, or maybe it was Dan, about like these systems seem very opaque if you're not like in the know about how they work. And it was conjuring to me about like, and given he's from insurance, like conjuring to me how like even when you have to do like first notice of loss for an insurance company, like they're recording what you say, and you don't know what you say that's going to like incriminate yourself to be found at fault later, because you don't know the processes or the rules. So of course these things are very real, but isn't the point that we as socialists are saying, yes, they're real, but they're only have power because we're alienated from our control of society. So maybe that's kind of where Kafka has that rational kernel, but falls short for us, right? Is that he's identifying a
I
real
know.
thing. Go ahead, push back, please.
I want to push back and say it's important to remember that Kafka thinks he's a hero throughout, and when you read this the first time, you do root for him more than you do when you watch the movie. You root for him. You keep hoping he's going to find some way to fight back and to prove his innocence, and maybe even to root out the corruption. I mean, I did when I was 21 and I read this for the first time. And even if you begin to realize maybe halfway through or earlier that that's not going to happen, you cannot give up that hope. That hope is what drives you forward. If you really got if you felt as defeated as you do at the end, halfway through, you'd stop reading because you've gotten the point. But you have to go through the entirety of reading the text to take up that fact. Also, the fact is that, and I should have said this to Dan earlier, that it's true that if you aren't in the know, the system is opaque. But if you are in the know, then you create what is opaque and become, as and become self-alienated or a part of the confusion that the advocate, he wasn't wrong to dismiss the advocate. The advocate was not helping him. He was only humiliating him. And the advocate himself was sick and lost and thought in deluding himself into thinking he had this woman that was for him, but then no one had any agency in any of these domains. So for us, it's very important in order to avoid like Zoran Mamdani, not to believe that we are heroes when we're not. And
But I
that's
guess my question. Oh,
mhm. Well, just and that's where we
yeah.
are in reality right now. That is the reality of where we are. The move of the campaign is to say there might be potential for something else, but it's right now only a potential. It is not anything that we can take up right now to defend ourselves with exactly. We can defend ourselves through good luck mostly. Um, I'll let Rudy go and then Hermal, and then I should wrap up because it's 5 o'clock here. So
Xavier,
Rudy,
you wanted also
you
to
want to
respond?
Xavier? Do you want to respond before?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask because so, yes, there's hope in the book, right? But isn't the whole point that that comes crashing down at the end anyway, despite it? And then related to that, isn't the problem that he's acting as a individual automaton inside of this corrupt system in a way that we as aspiring socialists would not be? But again, I don't know, maybe I'm missing the point, but it felt like the whole point of suspending hope was then to smash it down through incomprehensible forces beyond your control. Because I have read some other Kafka, and that kind of is like the recurring theme is like, aha, yes, you think that you have some agency, but let me show you that this, because even in Metamorphoses, he does like almost like a supernatural way of robbing that agency, right? So I guess that would be my only question. It's not even like a retort to what you said. It's just that my understanding is that he's robbing the hope away, and it looks like Rudy's gonna help with that.
I want to say one thing, and then I'll let Rudy talk. Well, just in Adorno's essay Commitment, he is arguing about how to interpret Kafka and arguing against a theological interpretation or a psychological interpretation. So it's not a matter of human nature, the psychological interpretation. It's not a matter of what the universe is made of. It's not a transhistorical condition of mankind. it is he Adorno says this is a I'm going to say Adorno says this is not quite what he says. It is a realist work. It is a historical work. It is a depiction of what Kafka felt about society and what and the life he was actually living. And it was not meant to be a commentary on the whole universe. And there is a part in the film where Kay says something like, "Okay, so I lost my trial, and but does that mean the entire universe is a senseless, nihilistic mess, and that there's no hope anywhere?" And the that was another grandiose statement, heroic statement that will be smashed. But it also is true that it didn't mean that, I think. Okay, now I'll let Rudy talk, and I'm not going to give any more lectures. Go ahead.
And it speaks to us, right? I think like in that moment there is a connection between us as the receivers of of this piece of art. And I think that's what Adorno's point and commitment is that like art can only be this representation. You make like an object of out of reality, out of all that appears. And the question is um how much you are willing to incorporate that which is absent. And so I think to your point, Xavier, Adorno's I think Adorno's argument, and we could disagree with Adorno, but Adorno's argument is that he says when you ideologically suffuse the artwork, you um, you in a sense smudge the appearance. You are not willing to really take it up, um, and so you cannot really confront yourself with it as society. And that's what he appreciates about Kafka. That your question, Xavier, is completely correct, but I don't think it negates Kafka, but it is actually part of the object of art because this reaction is something that is connected to this piece of art and not in a like automaton relation that it's like a I think that's his argument against Sartre that it's like you get an input and then you get it as an output you get a reaction. The freedom is still involved in it. We are still um, singular people who exercise our freedom in reading the object of art and perceiving it. We also change it.
Yeah. All right. So, Hermala, you had your hand up, right? You-
All right. Yeah. So I mean, I guess it's kind of to ask a little bit about, so I guess it's like with commitment, with Adorno, with what Sublation is doing, it's like you guys are trying to make art that and writing that like really expresses the full totality of the situation. Rather than just trying to create like, say, for example, social realist art that like may put out like a message that like, yes, socialism, yes, fight the deep state, fight Bonapartism. Sorry, not the deep state, Bonapartism.
Mhm.
Um,
I
but
like deep state. That's good. Good.
I was just listening to Jeff Shepherd talk to Tucker Carlson, so that's where I'm getting the deep state. I'm like deep state, deep state, deep state.
Mhm.
But yeah, because I guess like when I'm reading, listening to this, it's like it seems that there's like a danger with like more explicitly like social realist, socially conscious stuff, because it seems as though it creates like a specific message, but it doesn't like, but it almost like I feel like can kind of like draw people away from it because it's not, it's not like for example, the film Fruitvale Station. Have you guys
Mhm.
heard of that?
No,
That's
I
like with,
haven't. Go ahead.
all right, so it's with Michael B. Jordan.
Mhm.
It's this film about police brutality in San Francisco about a man who was murdered by the police.
Mhm.
And obviously there's a message about explicit like police brutality. Shows the cops as just, twisted, right? And it's easy to be like, oh my gosh, like this is bad, but I guess like in what you guys are saying, it's like expressing the full totality would be like trying to historicize to a certain degree what is there, like what the police are doing, what they're there, what they're like, right? And just not seeing like just the black person who got murdered by the police as just a victim.
Mhm.
Is that am I getting what you're trying to
Yeah.
dish out?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely. Um, Someone says that I think Eddie says no, Xavier says that the next movie night is Muppets Treasure Island. Um, and no, the next movie is going to be Muppets Take Manhattan. That's the good one. And um, I'm going to play a clip from our next movie as we go out in just a moment. But I also will say that we will actually screen Waiting for Godot on Thursday. And I may release this recording if it's all right with everybody, just on the YouTube channel for everybody to let people know what we're doing. I don't know how many people want to watch it, but it seemed like an idea. So Rudy, go ahead and you close us out, all right?
Oh, damn. Okay.
No,
Shit,
I mean
why
don't
did you
worry.
give?
Charles Grodin will close us out, but you say the last thing.
Yeah. Um, I think to what you said, Hamala, I think that's correct. And I think I wanted to make it maybe even more explicit. When you have like a realist, socialist realist piece of art, in a sense, it stops being a piece of art because it absolves you of um, the requirement to interpret it, to take it in a sense. It's already there for you just to consume, and there's no more work to be done upon it.
Yeah, that's excellent. So again, Thursday we'll watch Waiting for Godot. People who are watching this on YouTube, sign up for the Patreon. You can join our wonderful socialist. Well, I'm going to call it Socialist Depression screening series, and and join the Expensive Realist Writers Workshop. Participate in the long slog of the campaign for a Socialist Party. I'm going to end the recording here, but everyone else stick around because there's going to be some music.